How many plastics does it take to make an action figure? Stick around and find out. What is up, gang? Thank you for tuning into another Valaverse YouTube video. Hopefully you guys love this content because I love doing it for you. Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing. Make sure YouTube is sending you over to me to watch these videos every Saturday at noon Eastern time. We've got tons of great content coming out every week. They are a blast, and it seems like you guys are really digging them. Lots of comments, lots of good feedback. It's great seeing the engagement, seeing what you guys like for me to talk about, behind the scenes stuff, and that's what we're talking about today. If you're digging any of the shirts that I'm wearing in these videos, make sure you're heading over to Valaverse.com and clicking on apparel at the top, and that will take you to our merch store where you can find all of our swag from Action Force to the Black, so that you can support all of the Valaverse brands. We got t-shirts, we got hoodies, we got tank tops, stuff for the ladies, some thongs. So anything you need, if there's something that you don't have that we don't have that you want to see in the store, we can definitely get it. We can get tumblers. We can probably get some baby onesies. So we're working on expanding our merch store. So let us know if there's something that you want to see, and we'll probably get it done.
Wait. How do you put an Action Force logo on a thong?
So what do you mean? How you put it on a thong? It's on the front. You didn't see on the site. There's one that's it's Pandora's face and it says "Want a taste," and then on the whale tail of the thong there's the Valaverse logo. Yeah, dude, it's awesome. It's awesome. Anyway, so today we are talking about action figure plastics. In one of my recent behind the scenes video, we got a bunch of comments from people asking for me to talk about the different types of plastics that go into making an action figure, because it's not just one. There's several different ones, and they're used for tons of different reasons. So I got a bunch of figures, a range of vintage and modern stuff, especially our new stuff. We got Jester here as part of Series 6. That is, by the time this video comes out, he will either be coming out or already out on Valaverse.com. But him and Lieutenant Hune are part of Series 6. We also have the Black, our new modern-day pirate line that is highly anticipated. And so I'm going to be talking about the plastics that go into making Jester. So, again, I got a bunch of samples here, and we'll just kind of get right on into it. Now, when you make an action figure, there's primarily two types of plastics. Now, I'm talking action figures here. I'm not talking dolls or anything other than boys action figures. So I just want to keep the focus here. But there's a lot of different plastics that are used for other things, plastics that are used for different reasons, for, hardness, softness, glow in the dark, scratch and sniff, all that sort of stuff. I'm just talking primarily about action figures. So as I mentioned, two types of plastics. There's more than that I'm going to be talking about, but the main ones are PVC and ABS. So those types of plastics have a range of uses. So we'll start with ABS. ABS is a more rigid plastic. And let me get something. Okay. As I said, ABS is a more rigid plastic. So you guys know how maybe there's a figure line, a military figure line that does, say, bendy gummy weapons. Those are not ABS weapons. Those are PVC weapons. This is a Valaverse Action Force weapon. We do ABS because they don't bend. This weapon stays straight. When it's in the, in the tray, in the bubble, there's no warpage or anything like that. So ABS, again, it's a more stiff, brittle. I say brittle, I don't want to make it seem like ABS just crumbles in your hands. Like, it takes a lot to break it. But I am going to break this because I'm going to show you how ABS has sort of a snap to it. Whereas PVC, when you bend it and break it, it will kind of tear. ABS is more rigid and it just snaps like that. And you usually get, white stress marks in here But that's what happens with ABS. And, that's in a thicker area. You can get like white stress marks and bend it, and then it'll eventually just do a clean sort of snap. Whereas PVC, like I said, sort of tears. ABS breaks a little more clean, and it's just the nature of the plastic. You can also get a feel for ABS by like dropping it. It has like a distinct sound, whereas if you were to drop, say, PVC Casey Jones weapon, it's different. It's a more of a thud, whereas this is like a clank in a way, and that's sort of that hard, brittle nature of ABS. So as I mentioned, ABS, I use them for the weapons because you want your weapons and your accessories to stay rigid and straight. Other companies say, all right, so here's this Power the Force 2 Luke blaster. This bends. This is PVC. I can bend this all over the place before it actually, pieces are falling off of it. However, his lightsaber is ABS. This, if I push this too hard, this will snap. So I like doing our weapons so they come out and they're shooting straight, not doing an S curve when you're putting the weapon in the figure's hand. Now with ABS, you don't get as much detail as you do with PVC, which I'll get into that in a second. And most of the time, ABS is molded top to bottom. So this, if you look, when you look at something, you could see a parting line, and that's where the molds meet. And when they inject the plastic, you'll see a faint parting line. So my weapons for Action Force, it lays in the mold like this. It's molded top to bottom like this. They don't really do too many slides. A slide is a piece of metal that goes through, and so here would be a slide on ABS. So where this attached to the mount on the Vanguard, this goes in the mold like this, and a slide comes in and goes into that cavity, and it's molded around that cavity, and then the slide comes out, and then the mold raises, and then the weapon comes out. Same thing with on all of our Action Force weapons, we have, I think it's like a 1.2 millimeter hole in the barrels for our blast effects. This is in the mold. A slide comes through into the cavity, molds around it, slide comes out, mold releases, and then you have your hole in it. Slides for, say, this part here, which I'll get into later, there's a lot of different slides here, and that's how you pull more detail off of PVC, just the nature of the plastic as well. So ABS, more rigid. ABS is also used for torsos of action figures. So this Marvel Legend Cardiac here, he doesn't have waist articulation, so they did his upper torso is ABS and his lower torso is ABS. Normally you see the upper torso is ABS and the lower torso is PVC. This one is different, which is interesting because when you have ball joints, like the ball moving around, you don't really want the ball, which I'll get into that material also, you don't want that rubbing onto ABS. So I'm kind of intrigued on, if I can get him apart, what he's made out of, which I can't get him apart without, I don't want to break my cardiac, but he's in there pretty good. The other dead giveaway for ABS is if you look on a torso, their parting line looks different than a molded parting line because this is sonic welded. Now, sonic welding is when it's in the mold, so the torso is in here, the mold, the two parts of the mold, or they take the two pieces and they put it in like another clamp, and it vibrates and sonically welds the plastic together without using glue. So that is how torsos are done. Same thing on all of our Action Force figures. The upper torso on Jester, take his thing off here. His upper torso is ABS, his lower torso is PVC, but his waist piece is ABS. But you'll notice sometimes on, say, G.I. Joe Classified, people call it kind of the diaper crotch, which is a bad name for it, but they have an inner ABS waist piece, and then it's covered by almost like a diaper, whereas the pants would cover that ABS, which is nice because you get more detail on that waist piece. And we're actually doing that on our Splinter Cell figures that are coming out at the end of the year. And we're going to be doing it on our Extras figures and all of our Action Force figures moving forward. It actually is a nice process to get more detail in the waist piece there. Okay, so another interesting example of ABS is the Mail Away Mumra. He also came with his Fortress, where I think he spun around inside. Did he spin around inside the thing and you could put like Mumra and he spun around? Someone will correct us. But so this is Mumra. His head, his arms are PVC, but his torso, he's one piece. This is one solid piece, no articulation, is all ABS. And when I talked about how the pull of ABS, and there's no like slides and it really doesn't get a lot of undercuts and that sort of thing, you see it in the feet. So here his feet, you see how long his foot is? There's a parting line here. So this mold dropped down here and it molded that way, which is why there's not, this wall here is flat. A flat wall is a dead giveaway for, an ABS pulled mold. There's no undercut issues here. It all just pulls nice and easy, 2 parts. Vintage Star Wars figures. Not on him because he doesn't have a movable head, but Star Wars, it was the head, arms and legs were PVC. Torso is ABS on this Hoth Trooper because his head is attached. It's all one piece, sonic welded together. G.I. Joe. This is an interesting one because G.I. Joe is one of the less common. It's happened before with other toy lines, but G.I. Joe is a really great example of how the entire figure's ABS. The torso, the arms, the legs, and the head, all very hard ABS plastic, which is why those 82 zaps, the notorious thumb breakage, that's ABS for you. It's not like a nice flexible PVC on a vintage Star Wars figure. You had, if you bent tried to wedge that weapon in their hands, you get some thumb breakage. But in order to do the, I guess when they were doing the construction with the rivets, it was usually put the rivets through ABS rather than PVC. That's also why some of the faces don't have a great amount of detail. Like if you look at, say, Jedi Luke Skywalker from the original Star Wars line, it looks like Mark Hamill. There's a lot of detail in his face for being from 1980 or 82 when that figure was produced. But G.I. Joe's, their faces, especially on the sides, get a little soft by the ear area because they're pulling the molds going top to bottom. So you want to get the detail of the face. They're not really getting side to side. They're getting top to bottom. But yeah, G.I. Joe's, all very hard. How many times have you guys broken crotches on G.I. Joes? They're kind of notorious for breaking, but that's because of the nature of ABS. How many times have you put a stand or the foot on a peg on a vehicle and the foot peg breaks inside the figure? And it's like, that's ABS for you. I would love to know why they went all ABS on these figures, especially with Star Wars being a mix and other toys being a mix. G.I. Joe was really one of the rarer lines that went all ABS. Here is a figure that, again, is a mix. This is Turtles. So sonic welded torso, PVC head, arms, legs. So you kind of get the idea. Another thing here is Skullgrim. He was one of the Pretenders from Transformers. This is an ABS body with PVC head and arms. And you can usually tell, you could tap on ABS, and PVC it just has a softer, sort of forgiving feel than ABS. So just, grab a couple toys and you'll be able to tell the difference. I mean, here's a modern, Motu Origins line. The majority of the figure is PVC, his torso is ABS. The vehicle is, I think what this vehicle is, because so that's ABS. This is PVC. This blast effect is PVC. The guns on the side are PVC. So see that bend to it? You can't do that with ABS. That would snap. The stand, the tan part is ABS. However, this, trying to remember what, I'm trying to think back to my days at school where they were teaching us different plastics, because translucent is the one that's kind of hard to tell sometimes. If you see a translucent part like Luke's saber, this is definitely ABS here. This is something else. This could be ABS, but I want to say pure clear parts are a different material, and I'm blanking on what it could be right now. But it could be ABS, but it also could be another material. So again, PVC, ABS, vintage He-Man, PVC, ABS, ABS waist, ABS torso. This head is PVC. Now you're like, well, how is, the arm, which is stiffer and harder, PVC, and how is this head, which is soft, PVC also? Now that we're getting into that part of PVC, we're going to talk about durometers. Durometer is the softness or hardness of plastic, and it's usually given a number. It goes as, I don't know how low it goes, but modern and, or blanket action figures try to stay around PVC 80 to 95. For action force figures, the arms and the legs, I use a PVC 90. Sometimes I go down to 85, depending on the item. But arms, legs, heads are normally PVC 90. Things like his jacket here, you want a little bit softer. That usually goes down to PVC 80 or 75. Those of you that are familiar with Toy Biz Lord of the Rings, they had a lot of those really soft secondaries that the plasticizer would leak out and it would get sticky. I've talked about that in other videos. They would go down to like PVC like 60. That got really, really soft. So you don't want to get too soft with stuff. I mean, here's a good example. Casey Jones's bag here. I can get it off of him. There's a lot of flex here. The more flex, the lower the durometer on it. Because this was molded as a piece, so the parting line runs along the edge of the strap and along the edge of here. So it was in the mold like this. They had a slide come in this way to get that. So the mold did that. There was probably some other slides for some detail, but it had to come out as one piece like this so that you can reach that around and plug that in for his bag. But this is soft. This is probably 70, PVC 70. But that's durometer for you. So if you hear someone talk about durometer, they're talking about the hardness or the softness of plastic. So the blast effects on the Vanguard, the missiles, and on the Weapons Pack November, the rocket launcher, those were PVC, but those were made in like PVC 95 or 100 to get it super, super stiff so you don't get any warpage to it. But we wanted to retain a lot of detail that went around on those blast effects. That's where you would end up using PVC on a big part like that. But again, that is durometer. Yeah, Marvel Legends, I mean, they're around the same PVC 85 to 90. It's pretty standard. There's times where, it is sort of a science when you're mixing the plastics and stuff, and there could be bad batches of plastics. Plastics are also very temperamental. If you don't let them cool enough, or if you cool too quickly or too long, if they're not treated correctly, there could be breakage. So you could be dealing with a PVC 80, but something could happen in the mold or the cooling process that would cause it to get too hard and brittle, and it might feel like a PVC 90. And that's something, that's where you're always testing your samples. You're getting sample after sample, and it's like, I always confirm what the durometers are on my parts just to make sure that we're all on the same page. But my factory kind of knows. They know like what I'm looking for and stuff like that. An area where you might get a difference on heads is, and I'm trying to think if I get the Marvel Legends, you'll probably find it on like some of their MCU figures if you get an actor's face where the face is PVC and then the hair is a separate part. Usually that hair is done in a much softer durometer PVC, just because, hair is it's softer generally, and you want to be able to, have that fit onto that head. So you'll notice that hair tends to be a softer durometer. And I've talked about this in the video I did where I talked about the Motu figures and kind of how they were made. This was rotomolding, this head, but it is a PVC that is used on it. But again, you get a perfect example of feeling soft PVC and slightly harder PVC, but there is give to it. Now, the other reason you want PVC on the joints is because now we're going to talk about the joint material. The joint material is called POM. POM, when I was going to school, there's POM, there was Delran. They called it a self-lubricating plastic, which it's not like it leaks material. It's just that the finish and the way the plastic is made, it's slicker. Like it feels like if you were to take the joints, the inner joint of the elbow and the knee out, remove it completely from the leg, you could feel it and it feels slick in a way. Even if you were like put drops of water on it, beads off of it. They use that, the POM on joints because you want to have a good like motion here. And having that PVC slide across the POM allows for a nice joint feel to it. Same with Marvel Legends here. But, POM is almost like ABS in a way. If you were to bend it, it sort of snaps. It doesn't like tear like PVC. But again, it's used in the ankle joints, the wrist joints, even the neck ball here. This is POM as well because it's rubbing against other joints. And, you want that smooth sort of articulation, and that's why POM is good. Now, you can, and that's for the double elbows, because also the reason why they do POM on this stuff is it's injected molded. Sorry if I'm jumping around all over the place, but I just kind of like remembered this. So a double knee and a double elbow, even an ankle joint. So let's talk about the ankle joint for a second. Even though it's a single joint here, that POM joint that's inside the ankle is trapped within the PVC of the leg. So what they do is they take that POM ankle joint, they put it into the mold, and it sits in there. And then the PVC gets shot in and molded around it. That's why it's called injection molded plastic, where plastic is injected in. But now that joint is trapped in there. If you look at, the modern figures without pins. However, there is a toy company on the market today, McFarlane, that is still doing pinned joints. I have no idea why. It's such a thing of the past. But they don't mold around the POM. They mold the leg, and then they have someone physically put the POM inside and then pin it through. It costs more in labor. It also is ugly looking when you see the big pins in the elbows and the knees. I just don't know why that's a thing anymore. But when they started, doing the pinless stuff, that's how they learned to, double inject mold around it. And, something like the arm, they're putting that elbow joint in, and then it's molding the two pieces of arm around that joint. But you get a nice smooth flex to it. It performs very well. But back in the day, this kind of stuff, the PVC was slick enough to move against the ABS, especially, on him. It's just, you're doing a single flat plane motion here. You're not doing anything double jointed. So that's why POM started to be used in action figures, because of the double elbows and double knees. Now, looking at something like turtles, and I'm going to try to do this and not break him because they are notorious for breaking. Please don't break. Please don't break. Okay, it didn't break. All right. So this material right here, I believe this is Delran. I don't think this is POM. But you guys know on Triceraton, his tail is notorious for breaking. This material is not the most durable. It can break a lot. But Playmates did these. This is a piece that's trapped inside the waist here. It's this white Delran material. But again, it's a self-lubricating plastic. And when it rubs against the inner PVC, it has a nice feel to it. Nothing really gets caught up. You don't want to go PVC on PVC. You don't want to go ABS on ABS. You want to vary the materials when there's rub to it. So, I mean, this is one where, yeah, there's ABS on ABS here, but it's not like attached to each other. Whereas like, again, they had rubber bands, but this was PVC on ABS. But this is how you would get a nice joint feel, when that rotates around. This is a single plane. This moves around. The more rotation and articulation, that's when you want to switch to a self-lubricating plastic. If it's flat plane, single twist, that's when you can go PVC on ABS. That's kind of the gist of action figure plastics. There are other materials that can be used. I worked on a Spider-Man Kids line, Web Warriors, where the figures came with like a stretchy web piece that you kind of flung like a rubber band. That material is called PU. It's the same for those of you that have gotten our backpack sets. Some of the backpacks have the phone, the comm unit with the wire attached to it, and how that's really soft and flexible. That's PU. That's what that material is, because we tested PVC and it never got soft enough. And when it got too soft, it broke. So the PU material can really stretch. I don't recommend you sit there and pull your backpack apart. But if it gets to the point where it's nice and thick, like those Web Warrior figures I did, you could fling it like a rubber band. So there's so many different ranges of plastics to use, but those three, PVC, ABS, and then some sort of self-lubricating, whether it's Delran or POM. POM is more modern now. Those are what's used to create your action figures. It's simple. I mean, it is a science, like I said. You have to make sure that you're not just pulling it out of the mold. It has to be cooled and has to go through its curing and treating. You also have to think about the types of plastics that can retain certain paints or vac metal. Vac metal can actually be used on PVC and ABS, despite what Brian Flynn says. Just kidding. We did the vac metal on the Steel Brigade head. That was a PVC part. When I was on Hero Mashers, I did a Winter Soldier. He had a PVC arm that we ended up vac metalizing. But if you look at Silverhawks, the torso is ABS. I believe the limbs were PVC, but I don't have one to actually test. But that's an example where you could see vac metal being done on ABS and PVC. But yeah, different types of treatments are done on different plastics, different baking as far as like the painting process when you're doing, blow molding. Like the paint treatment on his head is much different than the paint treatment on other parts of him. But that's something I could do another video on if you guys really like this one. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If it was a little all over the place, but it's, when I'm looking at all these different, samples here, I'm trying to think like what part is what, like, G.I. Joe was all ABS, but then he had, a PVC helmet because you want it soft and forgiving to be able to fit on top of that head. If there's something you guys want to see me talk about, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you guys thought of this video. Seems like you guys really dig this sort of behind the scenes take on how stuff is made. So if you guys like it, we'll keep doing it. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.